Okay, good. And let's get that back up. And I'm going to screen share just so that you can see my presentation. Okay. How well can you see this, or shall I go into slideshow?
Okay, let me just share my phone and see. It's good. I see. I can see it.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know how much you know about me, sort of very briefly. I don't want to really sort of take up time talking about me unless you have particular questions. Um, I was bullied for a very long time at school. And then I found myself in a career where I got to learn all sorts of tools where what people say becomes secondary to how they behave and their actions and how we read behavior and body language and things like subtext and tone and things like that. So I had a quite a crash course in that, going into the sort of the acting career that I went into. And then after that, obviously in the industry, I got to witness a lot of bullying. I got to witness a lot of bullying in other industries outside of the entertainment industry. And so I've dealt with bullies sort of pretty much most of my life for a very long time and quite successfully. And I've had people even from my acting classes who've come to me and said, look, you know what? We've sort of learned so much from the class in terms of how to deal with people who are, outside of outside of acting, just how to deal with people in on the street, uh, in work environments, in life, etc. So everything that I'm sharing with you comes as a result of sort of years and years of both personal experience and also professional training. And it's quite unique what I'm bringing to you. So yes, let's start with the presentation. Feel free, Andrea, to like ask questions along the way. I'm totally, because I put these down into a slideshow, I'm totally, great with answering any questions you might have. If as we're going along, something occurs to you and you want to ask questions, okay? So
Yes, that would be.
um, my name is Michael Franklin. I'm an anti-bullying coach to those who will no longer be bullied.
Mm.
Okay. Um, Welcome. First of all, I wanted to say, Andrea, that on one level, I'm sorry you're here.
Mm.
I'm sorry because the chances are either you are getting bullied or someone you know is getting bullied. And I'm sorry that this has to be the case for us to meet in this way. On the other hand, I'm quite happy that you're here because so many people choose to not deal with this problem and it just becomes worse and worse. And as we'll sort of talk about it today, you'll see some of the effects of long-term bullying. So I'm very pleased that you're here. And also for those who signed up but weren't able to make it, I did promise you that you'll get a live recording of this. So hopefully you'll get a lot of benefit out of it, when you join by sort of watching the replay. So essentially you're here because you're either experiencing a bully dynamic yourself, or you know someone who's experiencing a bully dynamic, or you have in the past experienced a bully dynamic, which is of interest to you, and also potentially it's happened more than once. Um, Show of hands in terms of which one of these apply to you, Andrea. Are you here because of somebody else, for yourself, or?
I'm here because I see I've seen my husband being bullied, and now my son is experiencing. So I feel like generational, and so
Right.
that's here, and it's very, very hard to watch
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because it
And
shrinks their not just self-esteem, but their person, like a person, that person is shrunk when the bully is around, and it is really heartbreaking to see not being able to help.
absolutely, it is. And I know we're talking about a difficult topic, but I'm going to try and keep it as light as I can, because obviously, if you're experiencing a bully dynamic, or you know someone who's experiencing a bully dynamic, it's very fresh and it's very raw, and I can totally appreciate, having been through it myself, you know, how tough it can be.
Mhm.
But I thought I'd start the discussion today by just talking about, what is bullying, right? And the way I look at it is, it's a repeated cycle of abuse of power,
Mhm.
usually with stakes attached.
Mhm.
Now, this isn't some dictionary definition that I found. I feel, I've experienced bullying enough that at my age, I can call myself an expert in dealing with bullies. So
Mhm.
this is my definition, and I find it to be quite accurate, in that usually there are stakes attached to bullying, meaning, if you don't put up with the bully, you could lose your job, you could get hurt, etc. There's something at stake.
Mhm.
So, is a one-off assault or incident a bully dynamic? Well, if it's not likely to repeat, it's not bullying according to our definition above. It
Mhm.
is still, however, an assault. It is still an incident,
Mhm.
but hopefully it's over now, and it must be dealt with as an isolated incident. The thing with bullying is that the aggressor comes back for more, and usually on many occasions. So let's talk about the different types of bullying that there are. There's physical, which is
Mhm.
a repeated cycle of physical assault, either to get something from the victim or for no apparent reason. Examples are beating someone up each time they see them, running into them with a kick or a punch, slamming against them, spitting on them.
Mhm.
There's emotional, a repeated cycle of emotional abuse, either to get something from the victim or for no apparent reason.
Mhm.
Examples are teasing them,
Mhm.
saying hurtful things to them, saying hurtful things about them to other people,
Mhm.
accusing them of things they haven't done,
Mhm.
turning others against them, treating them as inferior. These are by no means like exclusive lists. The list goes on. These are just some examples. And psychological, which in my opinions can be some of the worst types of bullying, a repeated cycle of manipulation, either to get something from the victim or for no apparent reason. Examples are forcing them to do something they don't want to do repeatedly, or else something will happen, such as losing their job, such as revealing a secret, blackmailing them, or physically harming them. Now, Andrea, which of these, um, and as I'm asking you any questions, I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end of this call to have a one-on-one private chat with me. So feel free, if you want to discuss anything with me that you don't want to necessarily share publicly, feel free to say, I will share them with you at a later time. But
Mhm.
if you are happy to share with me, which of these apply to, you said your husband and now your son, which of these apply to them, if
Um,
you're happy to share that?
yeah, so my husband's experience was mostly emotional, but I think it definitely, affects their psychology, not maybe in the way that is in the example, but he carried it on, during the day and for weeks and for months, even if it's
Absolutely. And we're going to go into that. And is
and
your
then
son at school?
so he experienced that in the neighborhood. We live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of children, which we were really happy in the beginning that he's going to have lots of friends, and they are the same age and they are mostly boys. So it was, how did we end up here? This is heaven. And so then he experienced both physical and emotional.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes.
Sorry to hear that. Okay. So we're here to discuss dealing with bullies. So let's explore them a little bit, So now we're going to talk about bullies. Why do bullies bully?
Mm.
To get their way, to make themselves feel better,
Mm-hmm.
to make someone they have prejudiced against feel worse, to show off to their friends, to
Yeah.
prove something to themselves, to create a better standard of living for themselves, to feel powerful, to control, to keep control,
Mm.
to frighten others. Now, let's look at some not so obvious reasons. To get your attention,
Mm.
to get your approval, to get you to like them. This might sound weird, but sometimes the bully is bullying you because they don't think you like them.
Mm.
So they bully you to make themselves the focus of your attention,
Mm.
to get you not to judge them. All of the above fall into the category of getting your approval.
Mm.
And let's look at some more not so obvious reasons. They fear you on some level,
Mm.
and they don't want to fear you.
Mm.
But they figure if they assert themselves over you, if they show they have power over you, then maybe that fear will go away.
Mm.
They're jealous of you on some level,
Mhm.
and they want to not feel that way. So they exercise superiority over you to make that feeling go away.
Mm.
So an example that sort of springs to mind with jealousy is, a man could see another man with a woman who's very attractive, and you know
Mhm.
they think to themselves they could never get a woman like that. So what they do is they try and bully the man to make themselves feel superior to that man.
Mhm.
But in the final analysis, bullies bully because they
Yeah.
can.
Mm.
Yeah. So what do I mean by that? They can means that they feel they can. It means they have a history of knowing that they can. They've got away with it. And the systems that exist in place, whether it's in school, in work, on the street, with the police, in society, the systems that are in place enable them to believe that they can. I'm just going to take some water. How do bullies exercise their power to make you do what they want? Well, it depends on the type of bullying it is. So physically, they're either stronger than you, or they perceive you as being weaker or cowardly. They feel they have the support of others, etc. Emotionally, they see your emotional vulnerability and take advantage of it. They feel they can get away with it because they have the support of others, or they feel you can't or won't stand up for yourself, and that even if you do, they can handle you. Psychologically, they feel they're smarter than you. They fear you're gullible, and you'll believe whatever they say. And they can tell you any story and make you believe it, and then manipulate you into doing what they want. And they have the ear of the others.
Mhm. Absolutely
So,
true.
how to make the bullying stop? Let's look at what a lot of people do. Passive techniques.
Mhm.
Ignore the bully, hoping the bullying will go away.
Mhm.
Keep out of their way.
Mm.
Don't make eye contact. Don't respond to their comments. Walk away. Take deep breaths. Pretend they're not there. Pretend they have no effect, but then they exhibit physiological responses such as shaking voice, dry mouth, heavier breathing, sweating, etc., which tells the bully that the bully is having an effect.
Yes.
Active techniques. They tell the bully to grow up. They tell them it is unacceptable. They threaten to report them. They try being nice to the bully. They try to reason with the bully. They ask the bully why they are doing what they're doing. They report them. They stand up to them verbally, again, while displaying physiological signs of nervousness, defensive body language, fear, faster breathing, etc., which tells the bully that even though this person is standing up to me, actually they're afraid.
Yeah.
And that's why these are all examples of ineffective ways of dealing with bullies. Now, I did promise that I'll talk about why being nice to the bully doesn't work. A lot of times, if a bully doesn't have respect for the person they're bullying, when that person starts being nice to them, sucking up to them, complimenting them, it just makes them feel more powerful. It makes them feel like, you know, what I'm doing is working, so let me carry on. And even if they think, okay, you know what, I will stop for a moment just so that I can get more compliments, more of them being nice to me, etc., it's only short term. In the long term, all that's happened is that the victim of the bullying has tried being extra nice to someone who's being abusive. And it didn't send any message to the bully that what they're doing is actually wrong. So that's why I, against some of the other people who sort of make recommendations about what to do with bullying, I very strongly recommend not being nice to the bully, at least not in the long term. So what bullies do to increase their power over their victims? They raise the stakes. So when a bullying relationship starts, generally what happens is, you know, the person who's getting bullied doesn't believe that this person is going to take things that far. So bullies can be very, very good and convincing at making the victim of bullying believe that they're every bit as capable of taking things further. So examples of raising the stakes. Physically, they tell their victim, this was nothing. You're going to really regret it if you don't do what I say. E.g., if you don't move out of the area, if you keep coming to school, if you park your car in your spot again, which I'm taking for myself, by the way, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Emotionally, they tell their victims, if you think right now they don't like you, I'm going to tell people things that will make them really hate you. E.g., if you don't move out of the area, I'm going to say to people, that people from your country are unclean and you spread disease, or some such story. You know, there's all sorts of examples of this sort of bullying.
They can be very creative.
Absolutely. They can be very creative. And also, it's hard to believe, if you've never been bullied, that someone would go to those lengths to make other people turn against you for apparently no reason. But that's because you don't understand their reasons. They have quite strong reasons, but it's just not apparent.
Yes.
Psychologically, they tell their victims, you're going to do exactly what I tell you from now on, or I'm going to tell people you did this or you did that, something you clearly didn't do. And the victim's usual response to the bully raising the stakes is usually it's denial. So physically, think to themselves that the bully is reasonable and wouldn't give them the beating they have threatened to give, until they're quickly disillusioned when the bully actually does take things too far and gives them a real proper beating. So this is an example of denial. Emotionally, psychologically, well, people won't believe you. You think to yourself, you say to the bully. And then later, the victim realizes, they find out that the people did believe the bully. Again, that's an example of denial. I've added another one here, which is situational, because sometimes the bully threatens to do something, and then the person who takes action is actually somebody else, like a manager or a school principal or a teacher or something. So situational is they think to themselves they won't get banned or fired or expelled until it happens. You know, it's not beyond the bully to go, you know what? I'm going to burn down the school, leave notes from you saying you're going to burn down the school, and then, you know, you will get put in prison or get expelled from school for setting fire to the school. And, you know, you'll go, you won't get away with it. And then sometimes it happens, and the bully did get away with it because they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Let's look at some examples where the victim of the bullying isn't in denial, but they actually believe and accept that the bully is capable and willing and is going to carry out their actions. So then physically what happens is panic sets in. They fear the worst, the person who's getting bullied. They become stressed out. They lose their appetite. They lose their motivation for going where they encounter the bully, e.g. going into work or school or a club, or, you know, going to play in the streets, or, you know,
Yeah.
wherever it happens to be. They start having sleepless nights. They think about carrying a weapon. They consider asking for help. And more examples of acceptance, emotionally, psychologically. They think of what they will say to the others to counter what the bully has said. They start approaching some of the others to preempt the bully's threat. And sometimes when they do that, they begin to come across paranoid and lose credibility. And in a way, they're doing the bully's job for them by losing credibility. Situational. They decide to quit their job. They think, you know what? I'm not going to get fired because I'll quit my job. They decide to file a complaint or lawsuit. They decide to do some sort of preemptive action that essentially does the bully's job for them and makes themselves come across unhinged, paranoid, unbalanced, and probably, you know, if they quit their job and the bully wanted them to quit, then they do exactly what the bully wanted to do. So what's the solution? We need to look at the problem from a different angle. We need to not get stuck in the narrative. We need to look at it from the outside, which is why coaching really works. Now, I'm a big believer of what I'm about to say. External manifestations are symptomatic of internal motivations and prejudices. In other words, people act out a certain way, but it's usually to do with something that's going on inside, either with them or in the dynamic between them and the person that they want to bully.
Could you explain this a little bit better?
Absolutely.
That phrase, the external manifestations.
Yeah. So external manifestations are symptomatic of internal motivations and prejudices. Okay. So you have somebody who, let's say, was very fat as a child. and they're always teased. And they are teased so much and bullied that they become thin. They starve themselves of food, what have you. And they have all these memories of being teased for being fat. So then they come across somebody, later on in life, it could be a year later or 2 years later, maybe in a different school, maybe in a, you know, different place of work. And this person's fat and they're okay with it. And it triggers them. It
Mm,
makes them angry inside because they feel this person's fat and they're okay with it. They're not doing anything about being fat. They're not trying to lose weight. And it triggers them. And that
mhm,
triggering makes them want to bully this person, to make them feel the same shame that they experienced when they were younger and fat and they were getting teased and bullied.
mm. So the victim becomes a bully.
Correct.
Hmm.
That's not always the case, but in this particular example,
Possible, yes, very possible.
in this particular example, the only reason this person has a problem with this other person who happens to be fat is because it was not acceptable for them to be fat when they were younger.
Hmm.
And so now this larger person is taking stick and flack for something that, really they had nothing to do with in terms of why they're getting bullied. Yes, of course, they have something to do with potentially if they're overweight, but that's not the point. The point is they shouldn't be getting victimized and bullied for their life choices because they're their life choices.
Hmm.
Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my approach, I use a combination of psychology, emotional intelligence, and acting to bring about an end to the bullying extremely quickly. Okay. So knowing what to say, how to act, behave, how to see through the other person and
Hmm.
hone in on their insecurities in a way that makes the bully realize they have a lot to lose if they pursue this path with you, makes you bully proof.
Hmm.
And there's a way to do this. You can't just stand up to a bully, especially in front of his friends,
Yeah.
because the minute you stand up to a bully in front of his friends, his ego kicks in and he needs to prove to his friends that
Mm-hmm.
you are the nothing person that he tells his friends you are. And so
Hmm.
he needs to act out and make an example of you. So there are many things that go into this. So it starts with you, the person who's getting victimized, knowing yourself better.
Hmm.
And we, go into this from many different angles. So knowing yourself better is understanding human nature better, which means understanding the bully better. So as you understand yourself better, you get a greater grasp of who the bully is, and you'll start to read them better. And that's really the key to disempowering them, is when you can read what's going on with the bully, sometimes when they're not even aware of it.
And if you pinpoint that to them, does that deflate the whole action of bullying?
Uh,
Or
it
they,
depends on how you do it,
okay.
where you do it, when
Mm,
you do it,
mm-hmm,
and if it's the right time to do it. So there
mm,
are a lot of things, and one of the things I sort of spend time on with clients is something called situational awareness, which is how to read what's going to happen if you take action now
mm-hmm,
versus if you take action later. And that also includes how to read whether it's advised to not take action or take action. In other words, sometimes not taking action is the wrong thing to do. Sometimes you need to take action,
Mhm.
you know? So
Mhm.
it's not the case that if you're in doubt, don't take action because that might make things worse.
Mhm.
So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then we move to you, still you, knowing what to do. Okay, so once you know yourself better, it's about knowing what to do, and knowing what actions to take is a product of knowing what actions you feel comfortable taking and developing the skills and the emotional intelligence to know just how much action to take, not too little and not too much with each bully. And there's definitely a balance there.
Mhm.
You read one of my articles where I
Mhm.
said, don't like destroy the bully. If you like beat them to within an inch of their lives in a physical confrontation,
Mhm.
that's not going to end well for you because they will come back,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
So how much action to take is again about your situational awareness, being able to read the situation, read the bully, and also have an understanding of what that communicates to the bully and to other people. Being well drilled in the actions that are out of your comfort zone in order to bring those actions into your zone of comfort and competency. So, sort of with every client I work, there are certain things they're quite comfortable doing. There are other things they're like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And those are some of the areas that we look at, is like, let's look at that. These are some of the things that are a bit of a stretch for you. They're out of your comfort zone, but they're very well within the bully's comfort zone. And sometimes, in order to stand up to the bully, you need to at least let them know that you're not afraid to go there.
Mhm.
And that's what the bullies a lot of times are counting on. They believe they can take things very far, and they believe you won't. And
Mhm.
part of dealing with bullies is convincing them that you can and you
Mhm.
will.
Mhm.
So these are some of the things we look at. And part of where the acting comes into it is within the acting part of it, we look at two things. One of them is the emotional intelligence part, which is how to read behavior, how to read the behavior of the bully, and also how to read your own behavior. What is it that I'm communicating through my behavior right now to the bully, and how to change that so that
Mhm.
you communicate a different behavior to the bully. And then the other part of the acting is actually like role play, like rehearsing, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it and what we're going to say, and being well drilled in that so that we have some experience before we go into those battle type situations where you're dealing with the bully and it's like you're just reacting because everything's happening so quickly and your mouth is dry and you're really afraid and you don't know what to do. So, these are some of the other things that we look at so that you're well drilled and you don't lose your composure and everything doesn't go out the window.
Mhm.
The next three slides are not mine. I have copied them from different sources, and they talk about the effects of being bullied in the long term. And I've got these sources down below, so you can go to those links and look at them yourself.
Okay.
In the short term, anger,
Mhm.
depression. These are some of the things, Andrea, that you were talking about. Anxious avoidance of settings in which bullying may occur. greater incidence of illness, lower grades than non-bullied peers, suicidal thoughts and feelings. In one British retrospective bullying experiences survey, and this is, when it says I came across, I'm not talking about me. It says, this is the author of this article, says, I came across, of unknown scientific value, 20% of the sample attempted suicide secondary to having been bullied, whereas only 3% of participants who were not bullied attempted suicide. In the long term, reduced occupational opportunities. So it can actually lead to making less money, having fewer jobs, not lasting very long in work, lingering feelings of anger and bitterness, desire for revenge, difficulty trusting people, interpersonal difficulties, including fear and avoidance of new social situations, increased tendency to be a loner, perception of self as easy to victimize, overly sensitive, and thin-skinned. And perception of self is really important because what you think about yourself determines what you tell yourself. And what you tell yourself determines how you act, how you behave.
Yes.
Self-esteem problems, don't think well of self, increased incidence of continued bullying, I've got this thing in front of me, I've got to move, and victimization. And the source is thementalhelp.net. And as I mentioned, you'll get a copy of this replay. So if you wanted to go to the source, you can. Somatic symptoms are physical symptoms that originate from stress or an emotional condition. Common stress or anxiety-related symptoms include sleep disorders, gastrointestinal concerns, headaches, palpitations, chronic pain. And this comes from the National Institutes of Health in the USA. Bullying and PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Those who are bullied as children tend to have a greater risk of being bullied in their adult lives. The characteristic symptoms that develop as a result of bullying, feelings of powerlessness, helplessness, anger, fear, are also strongly correlated with that of PTSD, making it more likely that a person who was bullied would develop the disorder. PTSD is classified as an anxiety disorder that consists of 3 categories of symptoms, including persistently re-experiencing the event, an intensified desire to avoid stimuli associated with a traumatic event, persistent feelings of arousal and hypervigilance. And this comes from the American Addiction Centers. Okay, so we're back to my slides. Could it lead to victims of bullying taking drugs in order not to feel? So we know bullying has long-term effects. We know it makes people commit suicide. We know it can lead to drug and alcohol abuse. What are people doing about it in the main? And this is really sort of where I come in, I guess. I see a lot of groups out there. I see a lot of support groups for people who are getting bullied. I see books, etc. How much is it stopping the bullying? Well, clearly not very much, because there's more bullying now than ever. So making people aware of the problem doesn't seem to be solving the problem. Gathering around, forming support groups after the bullying has taken place is not stopping the bullying. Stopping a person being bullied, sorry, I'm just sort of moving this thing down so that I can read it, does not stop them from being bullied at the next place, job, school, sports club, etc. So, what's the solution? The solution is developing the skills and habits that enable us to deal with bullies quickly and effectively. These skills are not taught in any school, I know. There's no classes at school that says how to deal with bullies. So you don't learn it as a child. And as an adult, when you get a job, there's no separate department that enables you to go and at your work, go and learn how to deal with bullies. So where do you go to learn it as an adult? And there aren't any places. Hence the need for developmental coaching in this area, which is what I do. Solution more specifically. Learn the skills to stop the bully at the gate if they have just come into your experience. So many times, for instance, in my case, I've had people who've tried to bully me and I've just sort of, just put a stop to that right away, right there and then. And it hasn't gone any further because I've made it very clear to them that they do not want to go there with me, and equally teach clients to do the same thing. Now, sometimes when clients come to me, they already have a bully in their experience. So learn the skills to change your relationship with the bully by taking back your personal power if the relationship is already in existence. So the thing to realize here is that if you're getting bullied and you come to a coach, the first thing the coach is going to do is help you start to move that goalpost to the side. So, where the bully has all the power and you have very little power, you're here. Slowly, slowly, we start moving the power back so that the person who's getting bullied feels like they have power and they're exercising that power to push the bully back so it goes where it needs to go. Yeah. Recognizing that what you have with your bully is a relationship. It's imposed. You may not want this bully in your life, but it is a relationship in that they come and, impose themselves on you. And you need to recognize that you want and need to change it or end it. And these are the things that we look at. If you have a boss and you like where you're working and the boss is bullying you, ending it means you leave. But you may be able to change that relationship so that the boss has more respect for you. And you get to keep your job where you are, if that's what you want to do. It takes two to have a relationship, and this is your position of power, because you can't have one without the other. In order for the bully to have a relationship with you, you need to be there. And in order for you to have a relationship with the bully, they need to be there. And so the bully can't have a one-sided relationship with you because they rely on you and what they expect you to do in order for that relationship to continue. Now, if you change what they expect you to do, what happens is it changes the relationship. Why they selected you? Do you have any, Andrea, do you have an answer to this question as to why potentially, and again, feel free to say, we'll discuss it at another time. So why they selected you is a private conversation. You may know the answers. You may
I
Yeah,
was gonna say with the relationship, it's so true. I mean, everything is so resonating. And so there's a relationship there. So usually the relationship is 50%. So we are responsible for the 50%, I guess. Well, sometimes we go
absolutely.
right. Um,
Absolutely.
because sometimes I was reading some relationship books between couples, as you know, me and my husband. And so if things are not going, smoothly, which I believe none of the relationships do, after a certain amount of years. So, but it comes within you. You have to change, and then the whole relationship is going to change, I guess, in this case too.
Every relationship is about how you respond to events that
Yeah.
happen within that relationship. And
Mm.
those responses determine the outcome
Yeah.
of that particular situation.
The
Um,
reaction, the
I,
reaction.
I, I had this wonderful example of, as grown-ups, if we see a poisonous snake, we react instantly, we jump, right? So
Mhm,
that's an example of an event, meaning a snake appears, and
mhm,
our response is we react, we jump. And the outcome might be that the snake bites us. The outcome might be that we get away from the snake.
mhm,
Now, if you look at an infant, let's say
mm,
you have an infant playing on the living room floor and a snake appears, the infant doesn't have any sort of idea that this snake is a threat to it. So it might be playing with it.
mhm,
And so the response the infant has with the snake will produce a completely different outcome.
mhm,
It might be that the snake doesn't do anything because it doesn't feel threatened and it
mm,
doesn't feel that it's being escaped or attacked.
mhm,
Equally, it might bite the infant
mhm.
because that's what the snake does. But they're two different scenarios of responding to a poisonous snake, which is completely to do with what we tell ourselves. And that's
Yeah.
something for another day. But basically, between the event and the response, we tell ourselves something. And that's
Yeah.
what makes us take an action.
Mhm. Yes.
Uh, yeah,
Yes. Well, in our experience, unfortunately, both my husband and my son, they believe what the bully is saying.
right. And that's the other thing that we look at. And I'll go into that in a second. Um, no, I'll go into it now because I'll forget. Um, the worst thing that happened to me when I was getting bullied was I started to believe that the bully was right.
Mhm,
That, if for instance, the bully called me a coward,
mhm,
at first I would say, no, I'm not a coward. Then the bully would punch me and I wouldn't punch him back. This was when I was very young.
mhm,
And then it was like, there you go, there's proof you're a coward. And then, so we have three things happen. There's the action, which is the bully punching. And then there's the bully's belief, which is, if you don't hit me back, you're a coward. And that
mm,
belief was something that the bully convinced me of. And then the bully convinced other people in his circle that I
mhm,
was a coward. And then those people's beliefs also gave credibility to my own belief that I
mhm,
was a coward. And so that's what I was fighting.
mhm,
And that's the thing that brought me the greatest amount of shame,
mhm,
is that belief that I was a coward. And if
mhm,
someone had coached me and said, you're not a coward,
Mhm.
and made me believe it and worked with me,
Mm.
I would not have felt so intimidated by the bully and the next bully and the next bully and the next bully. So it sort of goes back to what you believe in yourself determines your self-talk, and your self-talk determines your actions.
Yes.
Yeah. So why they selected you is a private conversation. You may not know the answer. You may suspect the answer. You may not have the slightest clue. This is a private conversation, this topic is for a private conversation. The thing to realize is that why they selected you is as much about them as it is about you. And I'd like to invite you to a free discovery call with me where we can get to discuss the nature of your particular problem and see if we can get to the root of why the bully selected you and carve out a strategy for putting an end to the bullying.
Mhm.
And of course, there's no obligation to become a client by opting to have a call. This is just sort of me giving of my time to see if we can bring you some clarity.
Yes, I
And that is open to everyone who's signed up for this, whether they attended or not. I promised I'd send you the replay, but also the one-to-one offer is also open to everybody who's signed up. Thank you for joining me on this intimate discussion event. Now it's time for questions and discussion time. So, Andrea, feel free to ask me as many questions as you like. I said it will go an hour, and we started about 15 minutes late, so we still have time. But I'm happy to go over the hour if you have questions.
um a lot of things. I feel like you explained so much about what's going on. I tried to read about it and research, little articles, and uh, I come to believe that it is sort of like a power play, and
It is.
that feeds the bully. It makes them feel shine or inflate them, or I don't know, like or everything. But definitely there is not much what to do next, because I do recognize why it's happening, what's going on. It's also a little bit of tendency of people pleasing in some people, or low self-esteem, and they detect that so well, like a radar, the bullies.
Absolutely. There are a lot of things that come into it, and people pleasing is one of them.
Yes.
Their perceived belief about themselves, their sort of boundaries, the promises that they make themselves of the sort of person they want to be. Like, for instance, you can have somebody who says, you know what, I'm not a violent person, right? And what will happen is the person who says, I'm not a violent person, will naturally attract the sort of bully who is violent.
um
It's just how it goes. You tell yourself you're not a violent person, you're going to attract a violent bully, and that violent bully will take advantage of the fact that you're not a violent person.
mhm,
And this happens with all sorts of things. It doesn't need to necessarily be with physical violence. It could be someone who's sort of goes above and beyond the call of duty to be helpful to other people, to the point where they can get taken advantage of. Like you see somebody in a work environment who says, you know what, um, I'll work 3 hours extra tonight on my evening, after 5 p.m. when everyone else has gone home to help this other person finish their assignment, you know, and you're doing it out of an act of kindness, out of, benevolent
mhm,
reasons.
mhm,
And this person looks at this and goes, oh, you know what? If I don't finish my work next week, it's okay because I know they will help me finish it.
mhm,
So then they start abusing that. And then the next thing you know, that person's coming over saying, I won't have time to finish this. Can you finish it off for me, please?
mhm,
And then that person goes, oh yeah, no problem. Not, no big deal. And next thing you know, you've got a power dynamic going on, whereas this person's being taken advantage of. And it all comes about because this person is being very nice. But
Mm-hmm.
in being very nice, and there's nothing wrong with being very nice, in being very nice, that person is denying to themselves the part of them that wants others to see them as being not very nice. So they're working very hard to
Mm-hmm.
hide the fact that they're not a bad person. So they're overcompensating to try and make themselves look helpful, nice, friendly, this, that, and the other. And this is what we call shadow work. And I spend quite a bit of time on shadow work with clients, looking at, when I said knowing yourself in the presentation, one of the things that I talk about is how you see yourself, the choices and the rules you've made in your subconscious mind for the type of person you want to be, and whether those are in balance or whether you're doing it at the expense of people seeing another side of you. Like, for instance, I might say, I'm not a violent person, but if a bully comes to me and they're being violent, they won't see that side of me who says I'm not a violent person. They will see a different side to me. And that instantly tells them they can't push me around, because if they do, then they will get as good as they got. And that's what a lot of bullies count on. They count on it being easy. They don't count on it being a difficult job, because they can go to other preys. If you think of it as a predator and a prey, they can go to other preys that are going to give them less hassle. And this happens constantly in the animal world. If you look at sharks, the way they attack like floating humans, they don't come and attack right away in most cases. What they do is they sort of circle around and they get a feel for the people who are floating, and then they'll sort of bump into somebody. And that's a test. The bump
Mm-hmm.
is to see if this person is going to react badly, or do I have nothing to worry about?
Mm-hmm.
And when the human beings are shaking and shivering and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get eaten by a shark, the next thing that happens is the shark comes for a bite, because it's been assured that it's not going to meet any resistance. And that's no different than bullies most of the time. If the
Mm-hmm.
bully anticipates they're going to meet resistance, and they feel that resistance is going to be more than capable of dealing with them, what
Mm-hmm.
happens is they will pick somebody else.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's
It's just
obviously there's a lot to go over. There's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to learn. But yes, that's essentially in a nutshell a part of it. Yes, go ahead.
so, but at the end, I don't know if what do you think of that? What I tell to my son so far, but it's not enough, is that the bully is unhappy. They're really unhappy and they're really feeling rotten inside. That's why they do that. So it's not about you. It's still
There,
not enough.
there, there are many reasons, as we've covered it today. There are many reasons why bullies bully. So, without asking more questions, I wouldn't, be able to say whether it's the bully's unhappy or something. But generally, I would agree that a happy person doesn't need to make somebody else feel unhappy. So I would agree with that in general. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, you know, I will give you the option, like I said, to I'm more than happy for you to like join me on a one-to-one call, which is private, which isn't sort of shared, and you can sort of discuss, your particular needs in much greater detail, and it's all completely confidential. Yeah, if you want to do that. Do you have any questions that you feel you can discuss that are more general?
Mm, I would. I would love some more examples, but I know, I mean, if you have to go and you have to finish, like you said, you believed that when they call you coward, but then if you would have had someone to help you not to believe that, but they also convinced others. So
That's right, they do.
say, no, I'm not a coward, or you would ignore at that moment, or how would you act in that particular moment when they
Well, that's the thing. That's where we spend time asking a lot of questions, because in order to paint a picture of the particular bully dynamic, and here's the thing to realize with each bullying situation, and I've seen people give advice, and I think it's irresponsible advice, and that is they say, "Oh, I said this to my bully, so if you say this, it will work."
Mhm,
And it doesn't, because each person's different. So if you said this to your bully, it doesn't mean that if I say that to my bully, it's going to work, because me and you are two totally different people, and our bullies are two totally different people, and the situations are two totally different situations.
mhm,
So therefore, in order to paint a picture of the best way to deal with a particular person, we sort of need to ask a bunch of questions and sort of find out how it started, how the person who's getting bullied reacted in the first instance, how
mhm,
they've reacted since, how things got worse, how they developed, what the bully is capable of doing. There's a lot of questions to ask so that we can get a full picture of, okay, you
mhm,
know what? Now the best way to deal with this bully is to do this. And I can
mhm,
see exactly what's going on with them. And what we're going to do is we're going to start pushing back on those boundaries so that we start to take our power back bit by bit. Now,
mhm,
every time you start pushing back on the bully, they're going to redouble their efforts to
mhm,
work harder to get that power back. But
mhm,
what happens is eventually they'll realize that they're losing that power, because, with the right coaching, you have expert guidance on what to say, what to do, how to behave, how not to behave, so that the bully doesn't have all the answers to all of your answers.
mhm,
And that's why the coaching works,
mhm,
because the bully, as good as they are, they're not usually used to getting stood up to. That's why they're bullies, because it works for them.
mhm,
And they very rarely meet somebody who's actually good at standing up to them. And that's essentially where the coaching comes in, you know?
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. Hope that answers your question. Do you have any others?
Um,
I know it's sort of a little bit unfortunate because you're the only one here, so
yeah,
you could have taken advantage of other people's questions and sort of formed,
that
other questions. But do you have
that
any other questions?
yeah. So do the bullies then fall into categories? Like, let's say, um, I don't know, that let's say there is like 10 categories, and this is how you behave with this and this and this, or like you said, everything, everybody is different, so every situation is going to be different.
Every situation is different. I think there are as many categories of bullying situation as, there are, you know, novels in the world. Because if
True.
you think about every novel that's written has got different characters, it's got different protagonists, it's got different antagonists, and it's got
Mhm,
different plots, right?
mhm,
And every bullying situation
mhm,
can have infinite number of variables.
yeah,
And what we look at are the variables that are common, and see what we can do with them to take away the power bit by bit. So
mhm,
it's very rare, if you have a bully already, it's very rare that, on day one it stops. Usually the only way to do that is if you like stop going where you meet the bully, and then it stops. But sadly, that's the wrong way to do it, because if you do that, you still have the memory of never having dealt with it. And because you have that memory, if you run into that bully again, all of those feelings come back. But also, the next time you run into a different bully, you have the memory of not dealing with the bully the first time, and that will stay with you. And that will eat away at your confidence dealing with the second bully and the third bully and the fourth bully, because you'll remember that you ran away from the situation instead of dealing with it, you know. On the flip side of that, each time that you deal with a bully, it brings you a certain amount of self-assuredness. It brings you a certain amount of self-esteem. You feel good in your own skin because you feel like, you know what? I dealt with this bully. And then the next bully comes along and they can't succeed with you because you have that confidence that you've dealt with bullies in the past. So there's no reason why you can't deal with bullies again. See, here's the interesting thing. When a bully approaches you, the chances are they've bullied before. You're not their first victim. So they have this confidence that they know what to do, how to take power away from people, because they have that confidence of having done it in the past. Now, if you equally have the confidence of having beaten a bully in the past, then what happens is that you are equally as confident that they're not going to prevail. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Good. Should we leave it there? And you can send me an email and I can sort of send you my calendar, and then you can sort of book a call with me if you like, to have a sort of more in-depth discussion about your particular situation.
Yeah, that would be lovely. I
Yeah.
yeah, I would be very open to that.
Okay, lovely. I'll do that. Let's see. I'll stop sharing.